Welcome to the kickoff of the second season of Odysseys in Technology, which is the museum's speaker series, which is sponsored by Sun Labs. And welcome to tonight's presentation, which is called An Evening with Carol Bartz. I'm Andy Cunningham. I'm a trustee here at the museum, and I just want to tell you a couple of things about the museum before we get started on the presentation. I've been involved with this museum since it wasn't even this museum. It was a small collection at the Computer Museum in Boston, so I've been around for a long time. But I've seen how this place has evolved over the years, and we are still a work in progress, as you can probably see, but we've made a lot of progress, and we're all really, really excited about our new building and the new exhibit that you might have seen downstairs, the chess exhibit. We're looking forward to a very extensive exhibit that will be coming up called A Timeline of Computing History, that will give you a comprehensive look at the more than 800 years of computing history and the great things that it has brought and its impact on the human experience, which is kind of what this museum is all about. So there's been a lot of momentum lately with us. We're all very proud of what we're building, and soon we'll be able to announce a major piece of news, but that won't happen tonight, so keep your ears peeled for that. We're very excited about it, and we'll let you know soon. So I hope that you'll be able to enjoy tonight. I'm sure you will, because these guys are wonderful, and I hope that you will become a member if you're not a member, or think about becoming involved on a committee or donating, or whatever way that you feel you can become involved, because we are the people who are enabling this history to be preserved, and we need your help in order to do that. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Michael Malone. Michael was most recently editor-at-large of Forbes ASAP magazine. He's covered Silicon Valley and high tech for more than 20 years, beginning with the San Jose Mercury News, which is when I first met him. He was the nation's first daily high-tech reporter. His articles and editorials have appeared in such publications as The Wall Street Journal, The Economist, and Fortune, and for 2 years he was a columnist for the New York Times. He's hosted 2 national PBS shows, Malone, a half-hour interview program that ran for 9 years, and in 2001, a 16-part interview series called Betting It All, The Entrepreneurs. Michael is best known as the author of a dozen books. His latest book, a collection of his best newspaper and magazine writings, is called The Valley of Heart's Delight. He was co-producer of the major PBS miniseries on social entrepreneurs called The New Heroes, which was shown last July, and has a Silicon Insider column for ABC.com, which is one of the most well-read columns on the web. His next book, which he was telling me about earlier, sounds really, really cool. It's on Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. And Michael has previously interviewed Carol, so we know he knows what to ask her. And he's got some great tidbits that he's going to squeeze out of her tonight. So with that, I'd like to welcome Michael Malone and Carol Bartz. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Carol Bartz, who, when I told a buddy of mine, another old Silicon Valley veteran, that I was going to be interviewing her tonight, he said, you know, she's the only CEO in Silicon Valley that I would like to go out and have 3 shots of whiskey with.
Well, if I can bring Bill.
Yeah. So, let me give you a little background. Carol is the CEO of Autodesk and is one of the most admired top executives in high technology, and one of the most successful businesswomen in American industry. This year, Autodesk is on a pace to be a $1.6 billion company, one of the 10 largest software companies in the world, and has accomplished this feat while consistently remaining one of the most admired places to work on the planet. I don't know how many of you have ever been there, but if you've ever visited Autodesk, you not only want to work there, you want to live there. It is a happy kingdom. When Carol joined Autodesk more than a dozen years ago, it was 1/6 of its present size and fading fast. She not only turned the company around and led it through good times and bad, but has also turned it from a single product manufacturer into a wide-ranging software service provider, and accomplished one of the most remarkable corporate transformations of our time. And she's done it all with grace, a sense of humor, and rarest of all, in this town at least, humility.
Okay, we're done now.
I used to be a PR man. Ladies and gentlemen, Autodesk CEO, Carol Bartz. Now, we've talked before in front of cameras, so I know a lot of your stories. So I'm going to hold you to all of them tonight because you've had a rather remarkable life. So let's start at the beginning. It's always the best way to begin. On the plains of Alma, Wisconsin.
There were no plains, there were hills, bluffs.
Tell me
But it
about-
was the Midwest.
Tell me about your childhood.
Mom died when I was 8. 2-year-old brother, raised him. Went to live with my gram when I was 12. She died at 99.
She was an extraordinary woman, too.
Fantastic.
Tough.
Fantastic. And, went to Wisconsin, computer science degree, had to pay my bills, went into technology and never turned back. Love it.
Let's go a little more detail. I want to spend a little more time on your first 25 years.
Okay.
Let's talk about, first of all, your mother dies when you're 8. And you basically had to raise your brother. You had to be
I did.
mom for a while.
For 4 years, I ran the house.
And
No, it was great. Well, it wasn't great. That's ridiculous. I would have my 8-year-old friends over. My daughter's 17. I wouldn't let her 17-year-old friends over, but I had my 8-year-old friends over, and we each had a room that we called our house, and we had to clean it. That's how I cleaned the house.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Kind of a Tom
that's
Sawyer
a fact.
moment.
No, seriously. So we all had a room. We'd play house, and then part of playing house is you clean the house. I have no idea if the houses were clean, but no, that's. And then I cooked. I made Jell-O and stuff like that.
One thing I've never asked you is, what does your brother remember from those days?
I think he remembers a mean sister.
And a lot of Jell-O.
And a lot of Jell-O. My brother's really sweet. He was only 2, so I was his mom, and that's what he remembers.
Now, at some point, did Grandma look at all this and intervene?
Grandma intervened, and so when I was 12, we went to live with her, and she was just fantastic. But
Describe her for me. I'm trying to visualize what she's like.
Well, I can go backwards. I mean, at like 98, 99, she'd call me and say, "What's with the stock price?" I'm like, "Oh, leave me alone." She did. She at about 92, she bought a treadmill because at that time she was living with my aunt in Minnesota, and it snowed in the winter, and she couldn't get out enough. I said, "How do you know about treadmills?" She said, "What do you think? I'm stupid?" And so she was just, and of course your favorite story.
The snake.
The snake. When we went to live with her, we moved on the farm, dairy farm in Wisconsin, and in the machine shed, which is like, this is like a copy of a machine shed except no walls, so it had all these open rafters, and we were out there playing, and we looked up, and there was a snake on the rafter. So we went, woo, running into Gran, and she came out, and she flipped it off and chopped its head off, and she said, "You could have done that." And that's just how she was. So she didn't, sweet as could be, but she just said, deal with it. And that was it, deal with it.
High school.
Well.
Doesn't sound like Grandma was big into prom dresses and things like that.
No, Grandma, I was a freshman. I was invited to junior prom, so that was a big deal. And so I talked her into buying me a $29 prom dress that I promised to wear 2 years in a row. Of course, I didn't. I'll never forget that bargain I made with her, that I would promise to wear that 2 years. Oh, God. No, I mean, there were only 50 in my class, so, cheerleader and that kind of stuff.
Well, it's always been an interesting contradiction to me. Cheerleader, studying math, computers.
Yeah, but But you know, you didn't know that back then. Back then people rewarded me because I got good grades. And so, oh, Carol gets good grades. And so there wasn't anything about you were wrong, kind of bad to get good grades or something. We do too much of that now, like, if you get good grades, you're not cool. That wasn't the case in Wisconsin.
Now, when did you know you were interested in technology?
Well, I went off to college where I got a scholarship. I think one of the first people to get a scholarship in this girls' school. I had no business going there. It was totally inappropriate. And I worked the breakfast line, slopping eggs for all the other students. That was a really bad idea, but it's paid the way. And I was going to be a math teacher.
Like an elementary school teacher?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Okay.
Where? I mean, you know, that was in the 60s, and you could be a nurse or a teacher, and I have a size 11 foot, and so that nurse business didn't work. Have you ever seen a white shoe that's size 11? It looks about that big. And that was pretty important back then. So I was going to be a teacher, except I would be a lousy teacher. And I programmed my first computer, 1620, there's one here, and I went bonkers.
This is the only audience in America that would appreciate that model.
Honestly, I went bonkers. I was so excited. And that's been my love ever since. I feel so lucky that so early in my career, there was no career, so early in my life, I found what I love.
So you graduate and you go work for a bank?
Yes. Well, I started working for a bank in high school as a 15-year-old, as a secretary. I was really bad secretary. That's when they had that little white stuff. You could put this little piece of paper in there, and you typed it again, and this little white letter came up, except that my whole letter was white letters. And I was awful. I was really awful. But I'd worked in a bank, and then I finally, they realized I could count and stuff, so I got to be a teller. And then in college, to pay for college, I worked in a bank.
To get off the breakfast line.
Yeah, well, that's after I transferred back to the University of Wisconsin, yes, from the girls' school. And so it was kind of natural, because Burroughs actually offered me a job patching compilers. And I think I knew enough about myself that sounded like one of those things that you disappeared into a hole and never appeared again.
They give you the gold watch 50 years later.
Yeah. And I'll never forget that. And then I flew to Washington, and they offered me some kind of job in what was that, CS? Anyway, and then Sears offered me a job as a programmer. I went down to Chicago. Never been there. That was really exciting. And I walked into this big floor, and it was like those old movies. Yeah. Just like 200 programmers sitting there on desks, not even cubicles, just sitting there. And I went, oh my God. So I didn't do that one. And so I went to the bank and sold computerized banking services in the 9th Federal Reserve District.
Which is where?
Minnesota, Wisconsin, North and South Dakota, Wyoming. And so I would go to the little banks. You always knew the bank because it was the stone building.
The only stone building in town.
And I convinced Nellie to let us take the checks to the data processing center and then send her back a report of everybody's balances. I was 21, 22, the white boots and the hair.
Go-go boots, big hair, driving through the Minnesota countryside from
that
bank
was
to
me.
bank.
That was me. That was me.
Did you always plan on being a banker forever? I mean, was that your goal? I mean, the go-go boots wouldn't have worked too long at the bank.
No, but they paid.
Yeah.
They paid. And then I went to 3M, and I was a systems analyst on computer output microfilm. And so I did all the conversion because magnetic storage was going to be too expensive forever. And we had case studies on magnetic storage versus microfilm storage. The amount of data you could store in a frame of microfilm, and the aperture card. Remember the aperture card with engineering drawings? I sold all that. And I made all that work. I used to do the little teletypes and booting the machines, and I did that. And then I went from Minneapolis to Chicago to Atlanta, fast forward.
So you finally got out of Minnesota.
Yes, I did.
I ran into Joe DiNucci in the lobby. He said he first met you when you were working in Atlanta.
He did. No, Chicago.
Chicago?
Chicago.
Tell me about Chicago.
Oh, it was a great time. That's when I had made it into the big world.
Country girl in the big city? Yeah.
And then drove my plants to Atlanta from Chicago, and then went to DEC, which was a fantastic time. PDP 8s, 11s, and by the time the VAX came out, I was a sales manager, and nobody could sell the VAX. Nobody could sell the VAX. The compilers didn't work, it was a piece of shit. And the word came down.
We'll edit that out later.
The word came down from Andy Knowles, if anybody knows that name, that every unit had to sell one VAX, or else. And DEC didn't do many or else's, so that was a very unique thing. And so we convinced a company in Atlanta to take our VAX, our one VAX, and promised we'd make it work sometime. Oh, that was a great time, though.
Now, were you making good money at this point?
Well, for a girl.
I mean, you were living the high life in Atlanta?
No, for a girl I was making good money, but those guys always make more money.
Yeah.
They still do. It's a real pain in the ass. It's true.
Do you take care of that at Autodesk?
I try.
Yeah.
I try.
Okay, after Atlanta.
After Atlanta, well, then I decided I should get married because I was in my 30s. I was like 30, 31. And so I decided to get married. You had to be back at corporate so you could move around a little bit. So I actually started dating a guy in Boston, moved back to Marlboro. In fact, all you people, my first introduction to the Computer History Museum was in the lobby of the Marlboro facility. That's where Gwen gathered up the first machines, the PDP-1, so you can talk all you want about the Computer History Museum, but I saw it when it started. And there were all these old machines sitting in the lobby, and we're going, what are they doing here? That was before it moved to the wharf. So I was in Boston, had a great time at DEC, fabulous time. And then...
What year was this?
What year was this?
Yeah.
I joined DEC in '76 in Atlanta.
So these were the good times.
Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
This is when DEC ruled the world.
Ruled the world. Totally ruled the world. Didn't pay commission for their salespeople. That was a big mistake.
Yeah.
But ruled the world. And left DEC in 1983.
And came to California.
Came to California. Thank you, God.
What was your reaction when you came out here?
Oh, when you grow up born in Minnesota, grow up in Wisconsin, it was like nirvana out here. Oh, this is such a wonderful place. We can't ever forget that. And it was where there was a computer company in every corner.
Yeah, everybody talked computer.
Oh, and it was fantastic. And Sun was 9 million.
Yeah.
About 100 employees. And
you knew everybody's name.
Oh, sure. And John Gilmore, who's still around wearing the skirts and driving the motorcycle, and I'm from Boston trying to figure out what this guy is doing wearing the skirt. But I got that all organized.
Who hired you?
Owen Brown,
okay.
Who was CEO for a little while before we went to temporary CEO, and then Scott, of course. So, I obviously interviewed with Scott and Vinod, and
yeah,
great time.
How long were you at Sun? You put some
9
time in there,
years.
yeah.
9, almost 10 years. So
You end up a VP there.
I was $9 million when I joined them. I joined right after Labor Day, and in February, Owen Brown, who had hired me, got kind of pushed out, and so he went to Convergent. Remember Convergent Technology?
Oh yeah.
Alan Michaels. Mm-hmm. So he was hired there, and so he called me and said, "Come be a VP of marketing at Convergent, and we'll give you a Porsche." And at Sun, I think I was making, I vaguely remember I was making about 85, 90,000 at DEC. And at Sun, everybody's salary was 35,000 in California. Of course, I didn't know any better. And of course, the promise of stock options. And they offered me, Convergent offered me 60-something and a brand new Porsche.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Gone. But Scott and Vinod, I was manager of customer marketing. I don't even know what that was, but that's what I was. So Scott and Vinod, I resigned, and they said, no, meet us at the pepper mill. Remember the pepper mill? And
Sure.
Meet us at the pepper mill tonight at 10 o'clock. I'll never forget that, 10 o'clock. Oh. And so at 10 o'clock, I go to the pepper mill, and they said, "You can be VP marketing at Sun." And I said, "Well, what happened to Lloyd?" "Lloyd's gone." And that's when I really understood what happened in Silicon Valley. None of this pondering things.
Yeah.
And so they didn't offer me a Porsche. That was a dilemma. But I think I got 45,000 or something, and then, I don't know, more stock options, and I could stay at Sun, and I said yes. And so I became VP marketing.
I read a great remark about you during that era. Someone said your greatest skill was, and I never heard this said about anybody, but it may be the ultimate compliment in this town. They said you were scalable. But you think about that. You go from a company that's $9 million to a company that's $1 billion. That's serious scaling up. And most people can't do it.
Well, I mean, when you leave a town of 800,
well, there's pretty good scaling too, yeah.
you got to scale just to leave town.
Yeah.
And so when I left there, when you graduate and you're the big Pumbaa, the valedictorian and the cheerleader and the majorette, because you're the tallest one, and you sing in the choir even though you can't sing, and all this stuff. And then you go out to the big world. I can tell you a funny story. The first time I ever saw an ice sculpture, I thought, what the world is that? They took the ice that I saw in the Mississippi River every winter and made this thing, this swan. And so I thought, there's a lot I got to learn here. And so scaling came naturally.
Let's talk about the last couple of years at Sun.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're in a different world.
Mm-hmm.
You're VP. You have a baby about this time, right?
Well, I started marketing, and then I took Sun Fed. We were trying to get in the federal market, so Scott asked me if I'd take over Sun Federal, and I took over Sun Federal, and we were doing a few million a year, and the next year we grew to 130 or something. We had a big ramp. We got a big NSA contract and just some fun, a really good time. But yes, then I got pregnant and moved to Dallas for 3 months, and then showed back up on January 2nd, commuting from Dallas.
Yeah.
Good idea. And so I didn't have a job, though, because I had told them to fill my federal job. There's too much growth. You can sit and wait. And so Scott said, take over customer service. And I said, I don't know anything about customer service. And he said, well, that's okay. Nobody else does either. Because that's about the time.
Customers sense that. during those days, too.
Well, you have to understand, I mean, that's the time we moved out of universities where we had the Unix community who was very happy to diagnose anything that was going on with Sun. Very happy, and they were with us. And all of a sudden we had sold to the financial industry and some of those companies. I mean, Dean, you guys were way beyond us at HP. We were rookies. We had introduced a new version of Sun OS. It wasn't even Solaris then, it was Sun OS. We had a 30-day wait to call the customer to tell them we had gotten their call, not the answer, but that we had gotten their call.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I am so serious. They would log the calls. In about 30 days, we'd call them back and say, "We know you logged the call. What is your problem?" And we'll get back to you in another, God knows when.
And you coming out of the banking industry.
And Scott is saying, "Fix this," and I'm going, "Ooh." And so.
So I want to get this whole balancing act covered. Baby.
Yeah, in Dallas.
In Dallas. Changing jobs into a field you know nothing about.
Yeah. Now you're making me feel like a bad mom.
Anything else in the mix?
I have a very good daughter. She's 17. She's a little creep right now, but she was really nice in between.
She's a high school. She's a high school senior.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back there.
Yeah.
She really liked me then.
Good. She'll like you again eventually. So how did you manage to balance all this?
Well, when I was at work, I worked. When I was at home, I was at home.
Okay, that's simple.
Well, no. Okay, I'll be serious. I had a wonderful nanny from Bolivia, 60 years old, so she's like a grandma.
Yeah.
And I said, when Lainey says, "Where do you go every week?" When she figures that out, I will stay home. But by the time she figured that out, I moved back to California. No, seriously. I did for 2 years. I did travel back to California on Sunday night and came back usually Thursday night. So I had a 3-day weekend, usually. And I was pretty good, and I mean that, on the weekend of saying, if somebody called me on the weekend, they were trying to impress me, not because it was that important. And so that worked.
2 years is a hell of a long time to keep up that pace.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was. But I was younger.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it now.
Was that part of your motivation to take the job at Autodesk?
No. Because I moved back in 90, and that's when Scott asked me to take worldwide sales, so the field operation, and I moved back for that.
Did you like being in a big company? I mean, you think about it, Autodesk is now about the size.
No, they were 4 million. They were 4 billion when I left.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love big companies.
Do you really?
I love big companies because they're interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's...
But you can't be a jack of all trades like you like being. You can't wear 12 hats.
Sure you can.
In a big corporation?
Sure.
Well,
Why not?
Maybe Mrs. Scalable can do it, but most people don't get the chance.
You know, but big companies have a bad rap. Big companies are so fascinating. They're like communities of people. And so you're not only worrying about how your products work and how your technology works and how your customers work, you're worrying about how your people work. That's interesting. When you just have a few people, you all wear a lot of hats, but it's kind of simplistic.
Okay, well then you have a great gig.
At Sun.
At Sun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything's going great guns.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get recruited to Autodesk?
Well, I think I was mad at Scott that week. Seriously. Because I had gotten a lot of calls. And I thought about this a lot. I think I was really mad about something. And John Thompson called from Heinrich, and he's just a great guy anyway, and said, And about that time, I was really sick of, and it's nothing now compared to now, but I was sick of this margin pressure. Margins, oh my God. Every 25 basis points, somebody's killing you. And I thought, software? My God, they have 90% margin. No, I thought, this is the greatest thing I could ever think of. And seriously, I did think that. And I thought, you know, the action's going to be where the user, what the user really wants to buy. Because the application is what does what they want done.
Right.
Not the hardware. The hardware, and so I kind of was in that line of thinking.
Yeah.
That I want to get where they actually need the product. It's not just a platform for the product they need. And so that was kind of boiling around in my head.
Did you know anything about computer-aided design?
No.
No.
Well, not exactly. I mean, I had been up to Sausalito at some of the homes of the founders because we were trying to get them to port to Suns. So I had seen their demo. I had the general concept.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, that's a good start if you're going to be the CEO.
Yeah. I know a lot of CEOs that know less than that. What does Pepsi have to do with anything? I mean, I have a technical degree. I mean, I'm a kick-ass person. I can do this.
Okay. So how were you finally recruited?
Well, you know, I mean, I stayed with the interview process, and they interested me. Because what it wasn't a product problem, it was a management issue. It was a company that had been so successful and then just hadn't applied that much management structure. And I thought, well, I can do that part. Now, little did I know there was other stuff to do, but I was naive. I was really naive, to be honest with you.
Well, to be honest with you, the company was a train wreck about to happen.
I know, but I didn't know that. I wasn't even smart enough to figure that out.
Okay, so you just went in optimistic, thinking...
I did.
Just a minor management problem, you'll turn it around and everything will be just
I
fine.
did.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I mean, I'll be honest about two things. I didn't understand fully, and I don't think I was a very good CEO.
At the beginning?
Yeah.
Leaving Sun.
Yeah?
Did you go see Scott?
Sure.
Say goodbye?
Of course.
Did he offer to meet you at the pepper mill again? And
Well, no, because when I told him the package,
Yeah.
he said,
geez, take it.
take it.
Yeah.
But what he said was, you're going to be a big fish in a tiny, tiny little who cares pond,
Yeah.
and you're going to be a big fish in this big pond. But I had made up my mind. We're still good friends.
All right. Now things get real serious real fast. Mm-hmm. Okay. You've talked about this before, so...
No big secret.
You are diagnosed with breast cancer the day you take the job.
The second day.
The second day. You had the job
I
for
started the job
24
on
hours.
Friday. I had the job 24 hours. I started the job on Friday. What a funny day to start a job, but I started the job on Friday. Saturday I had a mammogram, and Sunday they called me and said, you have cancer.
At that point, did you think, I can't do this job? Not what I'm about to go through?
No, because now what am I supposed to do? I mean, I left Sun
No.
and no. At that time you think more about, well, what does this mean and what is all this and so forth. Now, I did talk to my doctor, and I convinced her that I could wait 30 days to have surgery.
Yeah.
Because we had a big trade show. I know it sounds, but there was the right reason at the time. We had a
Put
big
up cancer surgery for a trade show?
Yes, I did actually. This stuff doesn't play well later.
Yeah.
It's kind of a lesson, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't play well later, but yeah. It was our most important trade show, and it was in Dallas, and it was a month later. And I figured that if I could find a CFO in a month, because I needed somebody to run this place, if I could find a CFO in a month, then I could trust that person, and then I could find out what was going to happen to me. And so anyway, but there was this big Army study that said 30 days didn't matter. I won't bore you with all that. So she agreed with me that month was okay. And I hired a CFO and had my surgery.
Now, did you ever sit in meetings in the middle of all this and go, I can't even worry about it. I got to take care of myself right now?
I have actually a worse story than that. I get car sick, and I had negotiated, this was a big deal in 1992, I negotiated a driver, my car, but they would pay for a driver. And of course that was considered this huge perk in 92. And so my first day going up there, now I was diagnosed Sunday, this is Monday, and we're having a board meeting. My first board meeting, I don't know what you do at board meetings, but now I'm the chairman. And I have on a silk dress, and I don't have a seatbelt on, and I'm flying all over the back seat, sliding, because I have this ex-New York taxi driver as my driver. He's the worst driver in the world, and I get car sick.
Okay.
So I get out of the car in front of the Sausalito office and throw up on the sidewalk. I did. I know, Dean, you're really sorry you came. So I throw up on the sidewalk and walk into my first board meeting, and I have to tell them I have cancer. It was a tough time. But they were very supportive. What are they going to say, right? And I said, I'm going to stay 30 days, and then I don't know what the follow-up treatment will be. It was 7 months of chemotherapy. We'll go from there. So that's what I did. And my favorite story, though, is I had a beat on a great HR guy, because there was no HR in the company. A beat on a great HR guy. I got out of surgery. The next day, I'm on the phone, and I closed him. And he never forgave me for that. Because he said, what am I supposed to do? You're in surgery. And so the first week after I got back, he tries to quit because it was so bad. But he stayed about 6 years.
Now, if you look at those charts of the most stressful things a human being can go through, I think you were going through like the top two at the same time.
Yeah, well, my marriage was fine.
Well, okay, so three's okay, but 1 and 2 aren't in very good shape. What got you through that? Did you use work to distract you from the illness?
I did. And I made a mistake in not doing any support groups. If any of you have cancer or have family, send them to support groups. That was a huge mistake I made. Huge mistake. I also went back to work too early. They told me to stay out 6 weeks. I stayed out 4. Big mistake. I listen a little better now. Sometimes. I used work because I didn't want to think too much about what was going on. I actually thought I was going to be okay. I know I am. It's almost 14 years later. But work was a good focus. Otherwise, you spend too much time about, oh, this hurts and that hurts, and oh my God, I get, something, my knee, I must have cancer. Because that's what you do. You just assume any ache and pain turns into that.
And at the same time, did the illness distract you from just how impossible your job was? I mean, was there a moment where you looked up and you said, geez, I actually know what I'm doing now?
Oh, that didn't come for a few years.
Oh, really?
No, because by that time I was figuring out how tough it was at Autodesk. I mean, that was a bigger problem than cancer, is realizing that it was really tough. I called a meeting in that first month, and I said, basically anybody that thinks they work for me, show up, because I couldn't figure out what the structure was. And about 15, 20 people showed up and just sort of declared that they worked for me. I couldn't figure the structure out, because there wasn't much of a structure.
Was business doing well enough that you could learn on the job like that?
What's your choice?
Well, I know, but the board seems to stand...
Everybody learns on the job. Everybody...
The board stood behind you, right?
Yeah, but think about it. Every time you're promoted, the first time you're a VP, you're learning on the job. The first time you're CEO, you're learning on the job.
Yeah, but CEOs aren't supposed to sweat.
But people get this whole concept wrong. They go, oh, that person doesn't have experience. Well, nobody has experience till they have that first level of that job.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, but the meter was running on Autodesk.
Oh, the meter was running. Sure, the meter was running. The meter's still running.
I mean, Autodesk couldn't run on autopilot
No,
in those days.
no, it didn't. I mean, it didn't get worse.
So what was it key hires? Is that what got you through it? Did you find the right people? The board help you?
Key hires, just some basic process. The company had a fantastic product. It was old. It was already release 12, and there wasn't any process in the company. None. Zero. There was no salary increase process. None. For instance, some people got increases and some people never did, and nobody knew why anything happened.
Well, it's Marin.
Well, yeah, a little of that, but a little of the basic tenet of the founders was actually kind of a neat one at the time, which was they were kind of anarchists, and they just said, we want the programmers to run this place, and the product took off, no VC funding, and it was fantastic, except it got to a certain size and somebody had to run it.
Now I'm curious. A few years ago, I did a 13-part series of interviews with women executives. The season after I interviewed you.
You didn't invite me?
I already did. I've done a show with
But
you. You were with Gates and McNeely and Ellison and those guys.
Okay, fine. See, that doesn't tell you. And then the women come later.
Yeah. But what I found interesting, a commonality to all these women executives was every one of them had a mentor. Every one.
Really?
Yeah. Did you?
I don't believe in those.
Really?
No.
That's interesting.
I honestly don't. I'm serious about that. To me, a mentor's a snowflake problem, and there aren't any. Like, they tell us that in first grade. And when you mentor, you too much want to map onto somebody, and I don't think that works. I think you have to learn from everybody. I think you have to learn from around you. You learn from politicians and how they handle things. You learn from teachers. You learn what not to do when you have bad managers. I don't kind of believe in this mentor stuff. I think you can have people that believe in you, if that's what they mean. But I don't like the mentor concept. I'm not big on that.
They're teaching every young woman in business school out there to go find a mentor right now.
I just think that, I know they call me.
Yeah.
Will you be my mentor? I just don't like that idea. I just don't, I just think that's a bad idea. So.
Let's go back to early years of Autodesk. Corporate culture. Your place has a very unique corporate culture.
Well, yes. During .com time, though, we weren't so unique. But yes, we were unique.
I mean, it's kind of a cross between early HP and a 60s commune. Well, I mean, Dean knows what I mean by early HP. I mean, there's sort of the big family, you know, and it's like the HP big family plus dogs.
That's
dogs
right.
Running through the place.
That's right.
The last time I was there was a children's book sale going on in the lobby and in the cafeteria.
Yes.
Was this intentional, or did it just grow organically?
It was intentional from the founders. They deserve the credit. I think the pets thing, I think they had pets and they wanted them, if they wanted to be there 24 hours, they wanted the pets there. And when I came, I thought, you know, this, in my whole priority of things to work on, this isn't the big one.
Right.
And then by the time I would have gotten around to it, I actually liked it. My first day there, though, I was in the ladies' room and a Doberman followed me in, and that was actually weird. And we had General Motors in for a corporate briefing early on, my first year. And we had pretty shoddy offices anyway, but we had this little conference room, and they went outside for a smoke break, and they were so proud because they were in golf shirts, and that was such an amazing thing to do in the early 90s. We walked back in, and there was a black lab all 4 feet up on the lunch table, eating the General Motors food. Because I am horrified. And
You say, you guys want casual? This is casual.
well, they just thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. So they thought it was fine. I was mortified. So I did make the rule that dogs couldn't come anymore into conference rooms.
Good.
And we have a 3 strikes and you're out, kind of 3 poops and you're out. We have that rule. And we have the little dog bone thing at the reception desk. It's part of us, and it's fantastic.
So you grow the company all through the 90s. It becomes a very celebrated firm, and you become quite celebrated too.
A skirt.
A skirt. Well, well, I'll agree with you and disagree with you. Skirt, yeah, but damn successful company. Growing fast.
Thank you.
Growing well enough to scare everybody else out of your industry, which is a nice thing to do. Oh, sorry. And then we get to the turn of the century. Boom's on, and then the bust.
We didn't get the boom part.
Yeah.
So our bust wasn't that
Yeah,
big.
the boom was on the other side of
The
Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah, and the boom happened we were old economy, we sold old economy. It was an awful time.
Yeah.
It really was an awful time. And we got ready for Y2K
Did you bleed a lot
too
of talent
fast.
too during that time?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we got ready for Y2K too fast. This might sound funny, but we were so bent on being ready for this that we were ready a year early. And by the time the summer and fall of '99 came, they used their funds to buy everybody else's stuff. And we actually started going down a little before other people did.
And then you hit 2001, 2002.
Yeah, and by the way, we were only down 10, 13%, something like that. Listen, not as bad as this cut in half business or 30%, but it was tough.
Yeah, and layoffs.
Yes,
Was that the first time you'd ever
yeah,
had major
we had
layoffs?
yeah, it was. It was.
How hard was that?
Well, layoffs are a failure.
Yeah. But that's a corporate culture that I would think it hurt especially bad.
It did. I am very proud of the fact that I think 100% of the people we laid off asked if they could come back, when things got better. So they didn't leave bitter, but it was tough. I mean, as management, a layoff is a failure.
Meanwhile, you're looking at your product line, and you've been looking at your product line for several years at this point, and it's too damn narrow, and you're selling it the wrong way. Actually,
The sad part of the story is I turned the company around 3 times.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, and that's not, I mean, that's good news, bad news. I mean, the bad news is, do you have to turn around? The good news is, companies and markets are living, breathing things. And in a way, you always have to be considering that you're changing your company. And so the first change was getting off the dependency on AutoCAD. AutoCAD was 99% of the revenue when I got there. Old product had to be re-architected. I mean, really, seriously re-architected.
Hugely vulnerable to be a one-product company.
Hugely vulnerable. So we started diversifying in the kind of mid-90s, and so it had a lot of R&D expenses, and which sort of led us in. And by the way, software isn't that good until release 3. It's not. And so then the dot-com stuff came. Then that whole network thing came. And so the kind of the third, and now this sort of wonderful state we're in now, was how do our customers in this very flat world take advantage of networking and do their design and building, construction, manufacturing someplace else, and use software to manage that. And so we've got a gig going now for probably the next decade that's just fantastic.
Tell me about your product lines.
It's, I mean,
I think it'll surprise people.
Yeah.
Just how many markets you're in now, how
right.
many products you have.
Exactly. And I think that I gotta start with just what I say to people, the old elevator pitch. And my elevator pitch is, if God didn't make it, oh, this is fake.
God didn't make it.
God didn't make it. One of my customers did. And that is any building, any manufactured thing in a building, the dirt the building sits on, so the utilities, the land planning, so we call that our infrastructure. That's sort of government utilities, civil engineering, roads, bridges, obviously architecture, construction. Manufacturing is our biggest market. And then 15% of our business is media and entertainment, which is graphics for games, special effects. So we design the real world and we design the play world. And AutoCAD now is about 40% of the revenue, growing almost 30% a year, which is amazing for a product that old.
Yeah, after all these years.
And after all these years. Our business grew 33% last year, which is phenomenal.
And 60% of your business is overseas?
International. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I think that's very different than software companies is 70% of our revenue every quarter is new licenses. We don't live off a maintenance business. And that's very unusual. Most people are living 70% off maintenance business and some new revenue. But we have new seat revenues, which means new architects, new engineers. It's fantastic.
So you crossed $1 billion.
Yeah, we did.
Last year. Mm-hmm. That's big stuff.
For a software company.
Did you ever think you'd run $1 billion company in software? Of course.
Unfortunately, I predicted that the day I came in '92 with the employees, and I was years off. And they remind me of that.
Did you celebrate? Did you go home and
celebrate? Not really.
No.
Because you know what? There's more opportunity than that. I mean, we will be about $1.6 billion this year, and we're on a nice run right now. So no, we didn't stop. I think people got a T-shirt because I stopped all that stuff. I hate all those tchotchke stuff. I hate that stuff. So I stopped all that. When we had to lay people off, I said, "That's it. No more tchotchkes. No more T-shirts. None of this stuff. No more lunches. Forget it. Dog bone's fine." And so we got a T-shirt. Seriously, that's it. And then, but because we're having fun.
How many employees now?
About 4,000.
4,000. Mm-hmm. Where's the company go now?
Well, thank you for the lead in here. Our strategy is actually pretty simplistic, and I think it's one that's going to take us a long time. It's not only do we want to author the design, so the create part, but we want to help our customers manage and share the design, because we are the last application that prints out to paper. Think about it. Yeah. They do this fantastic, very precise 2 and 3D drawings, and then plot it out and do the whole rest of the process on rolls of drawings.
Right, in the back of the truck, out to the job site.
Precisely, which is crazy. And so the great benefit that came out of the late 90s was networks, bandwidth. And so to be able to manage all this data, keep it digital, and then sell software for lifecycle management and process management, because for every engineer that creates something, 10 people have to deal with the data. So, and moving people to 3D. Only about 8% of the world's engineers design in 3D. Everybody thinks, especially if we're in the computer business, we think 3D's been around forever. It has, but it's been too expensive and way too complicated. So we want to democratize 3D and then help people manage and share their data.
What about you in the future?
Me?
Your baby's going off to college
My
next
baby's
year.
going to college.
Time of transition in one's life.
Yeah.
You gardening all the time still?
I am. A terrible tomato year. Terrible tomato year. Did anybody get good tomatoes? Awful tomato year. Awful. Too cold and too hot.
See, I happen to know that when Carol has a bad day, she goes out and tears her garden to
I
pieces
do.
at about 8 o'clock at night.
I do.
With a flashlight.
I do.
Is that it? Is gardening is your
I took
stress
up
reducer? Golf.
I did 2 years ago. My husband asked me to. And I thought, when your husband asks you to do something, you better pay attention.
When your husband takes up golf, that means he's getting ready to retire.
He's retired.
He's retired. Oh, okay.
He was smart.
So baby's out of the house, husband's retired, company crosses $1 billion.
Yeah? What's your point?
Well, there's been, you sat on the President's Commission on Science and Innovation,
Technology.
Science Technology. There's been talk for years about you going back inside the Beltway. They got a call. They call, don't they?
No, after your 2 interviews with me,
Yeah.
would I make it through 1 speech as a politician?
You piss some people off, yeah. But
I would be horrible. Honestly, I'd be horrible. I wouldn't. Dean, would I make it? No.
yeah, but how many of you think she'd be awful refreshing back there?
No.
Yeah, see?
I wouldn't make it. Thank you. I bless those people that do that. Thank you for them. But it's a hard job, and I could not do it. I could not even approach it. So please, stop the rumor.
So do you stay at Autodesk forever?
Oh, God.
Die in the harness at Autodesk?
Die in the harness. Oh, what a horrible idea. No. No, I mean, you got to let the next crowd do it.
Yeah.
And so at some time I will. You got to leave when things are going well, and they are, but not yet. I want to enjoy it, too.
Yeah, but there's a trajectory, and the trajectory begins, it was really created by Bill and Dave, and then Moise did it after that. The entrepreneur, the CEO of the small company, the CEO of the large company, CEO of the public corporation, the CEO of the global corporation. Done all those, check those off. Then statesman. Then philanthropist.
Well, I like the philanthropist part.
Yeah.
But you can be a statesman in your own garden.
Well, true.
No, I mean, statesman doesn't have to mean politics. Statesman can just mean you're a good person or something.
Okay.
It can.
Philanthropist?
Well, I don't have the money to be a philanthropist. I mean, I want to give where I can, and I'm sure I'll get hit up for the museum and all that stuff. What a surprise.
Well, Grandma lived to
when
be
you talk
99.
about, yeah, I know. When you talk about the
you
Packard
got
Foundation,
40
that's
plus
philanthropist.
years of
I know,
career
and
to
I
go.
better.
Yeah.
No, it better be 110 because we're working on things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you do with the second half of your life?
Well, I actually haven't thought about it like that.
It's a lot of golf. While she's pondering that, we'll throw this out to questions. Are there any questions?
Wait a minute. I never thought about it exactly that way. I think there's a
Grandma,
lot of things
99
here.
on the Stairmaster.
I know, she did. And she had everything up here. I think I'll hang around and bug some people, and I'll try to help with charities and things, and I'll be vocal, and I'll try to get my handicap below 38. It's a pathetic 38.
That's sad.
And bug my daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that kind of stuff. Grow better tomatoes.
I don't believe any of that for a minute, but we'll take it for now. Any questions from the audience?
So, Carol, can you talk about the impact of the famous Autodesk memo?
Oh, yes. Information letter 14, IL 14. I haven't read that in a few years again. I think John is brilliant, and John Walker. And the premise of that letter is that Microsoft was going to own our market and so forth. That was written before I came on board. I think he was right about a lot of things, just not about Autodesk, per se. Luckily, we moved fast enough and it was complicated enough that it didn't happen. But he's just a very excellent writer and a very thoughtful guy from that standpoint. And I think if you could ever get John Walker back here from Switzerland, he should be on this program. He's fascinating.
You guys don't have to wait. You can just come up and stand by the mic if you want.
I have kind of a two-part question. The first part regards China. I was wondering, in China, a lot of times they don't respect intellectual property quite the same way they do here. I was wondering how you handle that. And the second was with India. India is really growing and developing a lot of programmers. I was wondering kind of what is your strategy, if you have an India strategy or something like that?
Well, you actually asked a kind of a hot button of mine. I just got back from Chile on Saturday, and I was in Prague a couple months ago, June. I'm really hot on emerging countries, on the market opportunity that we have. And I very much am a proponent of Friedman's Flat World concept. If you haven't read that book, I think it's a fantastic book. I've been, obviously, to China many times. I did India the first time in January. Love India. We have about 1,000 people in China doing software development. That's different. That's above the 4,000. We have our own development center, and we have about 800 people also on contract to us, 100% to us, that don't sit on the employee list, but they're our employees, if you will. We find China to be a better development place for us than India, for many reasons, which if you're interested, I'll go into. I personally think that India is important to our country and our industry as a long-term balance to China. I think China is going to be very difficult to do business with in the next decade. And I think India will be, with their emerging middle class and their federation, which has its own problems now, but will be much more amenable to global and American business. And we should not just put call centers in India, but we should work with India to be a more prosperous place. So, and frankly, one of the best places for us to do development now is the Czech Republic, because we actually pay less than India. We have better engineers, and it's just a good place for us. So we do development about 20 places around the world. And, but emerging countries are huge. When I was in Chile last week, I met with many of the government officials, because they're trying to also not only do programming, but outsource drafting, which is a fantastic idea, since a lot of that's happening already. So emerging countries are very important to our industry and very important to our economy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What do you consider your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses, specifically with respect to your company?
With respect to the company?
Yes.
Oh, good. God, I hate to talk about my weaknesses. You know, I think our greatest strength is that we have such passion for what our customers do. I mean, when we travel the world and you look at the tallest buildings and you look, I mean, our customers make this stuff. I mean, I'm on this big kick of trying to explain to people what's happening with choice in the world. And my favorite way to explain it is the shampoo bottle. And everybody goes, what? Because you want to talk about cars and airplanes. Every hotel you go into, every country you're in, has different shampoo bottles. In fact, you could walk right now to Long Store, and you could find probably 30 different shampoo bottles. Sizes, shapes. It's not just somebody had to design that bottle, but the machine that molded that bottle, and the machine that packaged the 12-packs of those bottles. And so the amount of consumer choice now around the world, you don't just walk into Fry's and see one TV. You walk into Fry's and see 50 TVs. All of those had to be designed. All those had to have parts sourced. All those had to be manufactured. All those have to be fixed. And so the amount of design that has to go on in this world is fantastic, and we have such passion for that. So that's our plus. I think our negative is that we're sometimes too patient. We're a little marin in that we will let things kind of happen instead of being really aggressive and willing to change and go for it. We changed a lot after the dot-com time and did get more aggressive. We were a little too laid back in the 90s. But I think you can never have too much, not to steal Andy Grove, but too much paranoia. You never can have too much energy around just doing better.
I'm sorry, I meant to ask that with respect to you personally.
Oh, shoot, I thought you were...
She knew that. She was
I
just
did
trying to get
not.
out of
I
it.
asked him specifically. No, me personally. You know, I like change, and I don't know why other people don't, so I get a little impatient around it. I'm also a big person in just believing you can do something. My favorite quote in the whole world is Henry Ford, if you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. I love that, and so I can't stand people that have the don'ts and shouldn'ts and should, you know, and so I don't, that just drives me crazy. So I think that's my greatest strength and greatest weakness is I'm pretty optimistic and I'm pretty impatient with those that don't want to drive forward. And I think that happens with my daughter sometimes. I say, if you're going to study, study for an A. Don't do a half job here and think that a B or C is fine. Now, if you study and don't get an A, that's fine. But, you know, don't do something halfway. Go for it. And hopefully someday she'll figure that out. But
I'm going to disagree with her. I think her greatest trait is her trustworthiness. I think her employees trust her. I think she creates an atmosphere of trust in the company, throughout the company, and I think because of that, the customers trust her too.
Thank you.
And I think they trust her because she's plain spoken and she's sincere. And as you can see, there's not a lot of artifice.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not a reporter anymore. I'm an editorial writer, so I can say stuff like this now. Yeah.
Let me start off by saying that it's indeed a pleasure to listen to you, and it's very fascinating. And like you said, you're really a straight shooter, and I love to hear that, especially from one of the few women CEOs in a really big corporation. What I want to say is, ask is that you started off a career right from hardcore tech, and you moved into customer service, marketing, and a whole variety of fields. And all this without an MBA in marketing and things like that. So are you one of the people who don't really believe in business schools and MBA and what they can give? And would you hire somebody like yourself if they, started out at Autodesk and things like that?
No, listen, I'm a big believer in education. And by the way, I'm a big believer in lifelong learning, almost more than, I think if you're not an interested person, you're not an interesting person. And so I can't ever say learning's not good. No, I didn't have an MBA. It didn't dawn on me that I could take on more loans and bother with that. My only problem with MBAs, to be honest with you, is they think they should claim the world a little too quickly. They want to be Pope by the time they're 28, and that's not as realistic as it should be. That's my only complaint. Not what they've learned, and especially the ones that do work and then go back to get their MBA. I think that's a nice combination. Would I hire someone like myself that didn't have an MBA? I certainly hope so. By the time you're hiring somebody for a senior job, I'm way past the education and I'm into what they've done and how they think.
That's pretty much what I was wanting to.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, that's pretty much what I wanted to know is at a position now with Autodesk, and does it really matter with those things or just experience? And like you said, everybody has to learn on the job. So is that really what you're looking at? And that's
I very rarely look at the schools that somebody has come from. I'm much more interested in work experience and much more interested, again, in the thought process. I like to get into discussions of the industry and how they think about things in the industry. To me, that says a lot more Now, we have a whole interview process. Somebody else says, yeah, we think they, know sales and marketing or finance or whatever they're doing. And so I can be checking on kind of attitude and thought process. But education isn't the first thing I worry about.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
With all the mergers and acquisitions flying around these days, is there anything unique about Autodesk that makes it a bad target for acquisition?
There was a few years back. I think a few years back people thought we had a kind of a crazy culture that would be hard to assimilate, and we were mostly a single product company, and that is a tough situation. I think that we've certainly proven that we have a good culture and that we have a great product line and great markets. We've now also become expensive, so that's good. I think the real interesting issue, however, is as companies are trying to understand how to automate the real supply chain, and not the .com supply chain stuff, but the real supply chain, where you literally start with the design of a product and you can take it through its whole life. Some of those companies might start trying to look at an Autodesk, but we're pretty unique otherwise, and I think that's good for us. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Carol. When 9/11 occurred, I read that Autodesk actually donated a lot of mapping and GIS software, and I've also heard that you were involved in the Freedom Tower for building management and some of the software is being used. Curious, like with Katrina that's happening, do you see yourself going even further into Homeland Security and some of the wireless technologies to help out with that?
Yeah, we actually have people on site there because FEMA and, in fact, the state of Florida uses our software for hurricane watches, for evacuation management, for shelter management, for all of that sort of thing. And so we have the same group that we sent to the various hurricanes in Florida are on ground now in the Gulf states. We have Homeland software. We have security software. Because it turns out, when you think about it, Columbine, let's go to another disaster, Columbine High School. The big problem they have with Columbine is they didn't have a floor plan of the school. And if they would have, they could have rescued that poor science teacher that was in the closet trying to call out and so forth. They actually set up their command post within gun sight of the cafeteria because they didn't know what the cafeteria was. So they made all kinds of errors. So many of the states now are using our software because they can take the floor plans of all the public buildings and the maps, so the streets, and we have software that will say how, where the line of sight is for guns, where the cloud of chemicals will go, and so many of the communities are starting to buy that for just that point, because it's, again, you're integrating outside plants or maps with inside facilities. So, and there'll be more and more of that. With the Muir building in Oklahoma, they actually use the blueprints of the building that were in AutoCAD to reconstruct, as they went into the layers, what was on that floor using the building plans. So we tend to show up at all the disasters with a team that helps them pull this data together quickly, because a lot of places it's not yet in coordinated databases. Let's face it, that'll take a long time, but to help them do that sort of thing.
Real quick, we're almost out
Carol,
of time.
before you alluded to 3D development and how so few designers and developers are developing in 3D. As someone who has worked in 3D and knows how hard it is, what do you see the future of Autodesk for in 3D? What type of applications do you envision would be most helpful?
Well, we have...
How to simplify it?
Yeah, we have obviously 3D manufacturing design. We now have 3D building design because, let's face it, most of you can't read a blueprint, but if you actually see it emerge in a 3D model, you go, oh, well, that's not what I had in mind. The biggest problem with 3D is it is too difficult. And dream is to democratize it. We talk about democratizing 3D. To do that, it has to be inexpensive and has to be very, very intuitive.
Simpler to develop.
Simpler. Now, having said that, it is what we have is simpler than what is common on the market now, but the average bear still can't use it. I mean, you still have to be a very trained engineer to use it. I don't think we're ever going to have it where I can use it, you know, if I'm the model. But clearly, if an engineer can start designing in 3D within a month, we've been successful.
Thank you.
Good questions, folks. Thank you very much. And Carol, before they thank you, I want to thank you, because without you, this town wouldn't be nearly as interesting, and it wouldn't be hardly any fun. So thank you.
Thank you. I have fun.
So you guys, on behalf of the museum, I'd like to thank you, Carol, for taking your time to do this. Everybody's really enjoyed it, and we have a little gift for you. Doesn't Carol look fantastic, by the way?
Thank you. Give my daughter.
So this is signed by Michael.
Oh.
And this one is signed by Carol.
Well, thank you.
Oh, I'm going to ring something on yours. Thank you.
And thanks, Michael, for your great interviewing skills. That was wonderful.
Pleasure. You make it easy.